So this is just.
The smug.
This is just
So you can click the next one.
Tell me which way it goes. All right.
Wow,
So this
really?
is the theme.
You can.
You can spin off it, but that's the way the
It gives
slides
you
are
a
gonna.
hint.
That's a pretty strong hint.
I think it's subtle, but it's perfectly good. So we'll go with that. Oh, I saw it. So it does go by itself. Well, thank you all for coming this afternoon. And as this can tell you right here, if you take one of each of those, at the end of the day, your brain could look like that. So, as all of the text says, there are various other implications of it. What it really means is this. DNA and embryonic stem cells can get selected. They get, messed around with by a blast cyst. Things get fertilized, which often happens, and they end up looking like a foster mother. So, there are architects out there who are able to design spaces with blue walls, and often with glass in them and little things that hold skinny, test tubes and stuff on them. And sometimes the lab workers actually get mutated if they've taken too much. And so what happens then is, as it's ingested, and you can see here the path of things as it sort of goes down, but then works its way back up straight to the brain. And this is, well, he talks about the chemical structure and all of that sort of stuff. But the point is that ecstasy can be easily arrived at, and certainly easily migrates to the brain. Now, at a very, very large scale, or actually at the nanoscale, but blown up so that we can all see it, you can see a normal brain, in this case, with these little red thingamajigs, that turns into a pumpkin if one takes too much ecstasy. Now, there are certain tests, one of which is the scientists with 5 monkeys in a cage ladder. This is known as the ladder and banana test. And what happens is, instead of the graph going like that, it oftentimes goes like this, and your brain ends up going, sort of backwards and upside down. Which leads to having to make presentations when one has a choice to do something totally different, but nevertheless faces the music and decides to make the presentation, whether it's about ecstasy or not. And it might be bison that are doing that, or actually, if you're further away, it might be something entirely different from bison. But it kind of looks like it. Now, there are, of course, choices to be made. Does one take the blue M&M, the red M&M, the one with the ecstasy, the one with no ecstasy? Perhaps different drugs from my earlier generation, but nevertheless, there's a world of choice and a potential for a world of hurt. So, as this diagram shows, this is my favorite diagram of the whole presentation, talking about target baited and probabilistic baiting. Probabilistic baiting comes into play in this whole notion of animal choice, reward delivery, and the empty target. So, what are the effects of the drugs? There's the damn funny photograph effect, which, I think this was Rayford, but I'm not sure. But acute effects can happen. Reduced appetite, yet an elevated mood. Stimulation, that has to do with the stimulus package, which I'm sure you know. There are life-threatening effects. Arrhythmias, renal failure, we're not going to go there, talk about that. Hyperthermia, I thought that had to do with being cold, but it has to do with something in the hippocampus or some other kind of brain-located area. I'm glad that slide moved on. There's also serotonin that's present in cerebral cortex neurons. This, of course, is very well known, so I don't even think I'm going to speak to this slide. But, 7 years after, what's interesting is that 2 weeks after, it really goes to hell, but then, things come back and you just get So, the results, as graphically shown, things go up and down. And then there's, of course, the before and after. Before, okay, you're in a pretty good mood, you can stand erect, you can almost walk on 2 feet. In the end, forget about it. Chances are you need all 4 legs, and as you saw, the serotonin nerve terminals are just shot to hell. That is his middle finger, isn't it? So I think there's a pretty good message there. I'm hoping this is the last slide. But if I stall long enough, we'll get to the next one. Okay, I think we already talked about this one, but nevertheless, it talks about the basal ganglia over there. And I knew a guy named Basil, and he was kind of gangly, but nevertheless, the hypothalamus and the hippocampus both get affected significantly by ecstasy. And, the middle of your brain turns kind of purple. Now, all right, so now there's an audience participation part here, so who knows which of these is on ecstasy and which of them isn't? It's a trick answer, neither one. Okay.
Wow.
I should have started counting at the beginning. This is 20 slides,
You
right?
can switch back and forth too. if you
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think we need to go back. So, as you can see, there's a significant difference between the female stimulus and the male stimulus that occurs in this. The ram represents the male stimulus, evidently, and the chimpanzee on the back, I think, the female stimulus. This is the Siamese twin stimulus, which is totally different and requires goggles. I'll just move on now that I know I can do that. This was an early photograph of one of the mascots of Kansas University. I said something about heckling earlier. And the other one, I'm not sure quite what that is. That might be the GSD,
That's Kansas
but I'm not
State.
sure.
Oh.